This is probably one of the best intros to any game ever. And I'm only saying that because this... It's not even so much because of what happens as much as like what happens projects a tone and like a sense of scale of the threat you're about to face. But it doesn't give too much away, if you know what I mean.
It's fairly discreet because even in the video, no one actually really knows what's going on. He's just being faced with the pilot that's there is just being faced with something, and he's basically in panic mode. He's hyperventilating and everything, it seems.
Yeah, and you know, and it's actually even more so because like you notice like he's the only one there. His sensors are malfunctioning. Like he's probably going through electronic failure eventually. And really, it's like the fact that he got back here with his engine in that condition is actually kind of amazing.
Yeah,
this one reminds me of way too much.
But the great thing about this intro to me is that it kind of shows everything you need to see before you play the game. It gets you interested. It's kind of like a good introductory paragraph in some sort of essay.
Yeah.
It draws you in.
And even when they show you the Sheevan fighter, they don't actually like give you a full like they don't show it all the way, like it's through a filter. And even when they show up and like you have a full view of them, once again you have no idea, like you get like it's trying to project a large scale, like they're a huge threat, but at the same time it's still vague enough to where it kind of creates a mystery for later on in the game. It's like you know it's coming, but at the same time, because of what this intro sets up, it creates suspense for later on in the game. But I guess, like as you said, and here it is. Yeah. And then this giant portal opens up, and you're like, what?
Yeah, and the great thing about this is it only gives you a somewhat of a shot. You don't actually see the whole thing. You just see it coming. You don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's like you see it jumping. It's like, see, right here, you see the Sheevan fighter, but the giant capital ship is coming in. It's like in the giant capital ship coming in, you get a good idea of the scale between the fighter and the capital ship with that one instance. But at the same time, you only saw like maybe a sixth of the actual length of it at the time. Like you don't get like a full idea of how powerful this thing is until later on in the game.
And also, later on, when you see it, if you think back to it, it kind of sets up the David versus Goliath kind of theme that it has going there with the huge ship coming out of nowhere, and the only thing that you see is the confused fighter pilot, and that pretty much sets up the rest of the game.
Which, it's actually it's almost a little bit jarring, because when you get into these training missions, it's like, the threat of them, they're not there. Like, there's no mention of them at all. Like, this, and I guess perhaps you could argue it's because the training missions are there more for the players than anything. But it feels so separated from everything else. You're kind of like, where are the aliens exactly? Are we not dealing with them? Are we not on red alert? What's going on?
Basically, the intro sets up the large story, whereas the beginning of the game, other than teaching you how to play, as we'll get farther in the missions, it kind of shows what's been going on before getting to the main plot.
Yeah. And, you know, this is just a random question, but I always, like, something that's interesting about these training missions, I always wondered, is exactly where we are. Like, I always, like, this isn't me thinking this now, but I'm wondering where exactly we are relative to the rest of the universe. I'm only asking this because, the first opening missions are in Beetlejuice, but I'll bring up Beetlejuice later again. But, like, I always wonder, are we in the Beetlejuice system, or are we just, like, in the training system, which is, like, completely cut off from all the realities?
I'm actually not sure because, I mean, there is a mission simulator in the game that you can do, but I'm not sure if that's technically a canon part of the universe.
Yeah.
So this could be a simulator. It could just,
That's actually
be a random place.
Which that's actually a good argument to make, because in the mission simulator, even though like they'll tell you would have gotten a medal, if you don't already have the medal, you don't earn the medal from a mission simulator. You have to get the medal from your campaign playthrough. So it doesn't even count if you're going to the mission simulator. So that's actually a good argument, right? You could argue that the mission simulator is just for pilots who are just for the purpose of for the sake of pilots who weren't part of the battle. It's like, here, we're going to simulate this battle for you, and you take part of it. But we're not actually going to give you a medal if you succeed in it because it's not really happening.
Well, as you can see right here, it's just the basic training mission. Basically, they're just telling you how to target things, what everything actually is. And it's interesting for a first-time player, but if you played the game as much as I have, it's more of something that you just glaze over, and if you pay attention enough, you see I start getting lazy and stop caring most of the way through it. So.
And you know what the thing is? I'm not even playing this, and I was like, I almost reached over to my computer and started moving my arrow keys, like, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna move the ship now. Like, oh, it's a recording, crap. Oh, crap. I can't do it. Like, and you know what? And I think this is, the reason we're showing the training missions in general is because I think we need to be able to talk about, here we're going to talk about Freespace in general, really. And I think, and it's kind of sad in a lot of ways that there aren't really any games like this anymore. All flight simulators that I've seen come out recently are all pretty much grounded in more modern times. They're not space simulators, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, Freespace is pretty much the last great space sim. I mean, I admit Freelancer is pretty good. I don't think it's quite Freespace in what it's doing. I think it's a little bit different. But
Yeah, they're both space simulators, but they're two very different games.
Yeah. I mean, Freespace kind of takes up that more X-Wing sort of feel to me, rather than what Freelancer does, which is kind of its own thing with the mouse control.
Which I admit, I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't made another X-Wing.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the X-Wing series. I own all of them, so
I mean, like, and I guess the reason I did that is because, like, I mean, Freespace, like, if they don't make a sequel, like, but like, X-Wing actually has, like, a pre-existing property behind it already. And I'm kind of like, you know, I always wonder, like, you already have that boost to, like to help hype up the game, but they still haven't made a new game for it yet.
And there's a market for it. I mean, I think one of the earlier arguments against making more space sims is that there wasn't a joystick playing market, which, you know...
It's a fair enough point, I'll admit. But at the same time, I still would say that at the very least, if you really think that, then I would argue that it would be a good idea to release a game like this onto Steam or something like that, not on Origin. Steam. No, avoid Origin like the plague.
That's a whole nother.
Okay, let's not even talk about EA. Let's not even talk about EA. Yeah, but
so
because like when you put it on Steam, you don't have to worry about the commitment that comes with making physical copies. Basically, if you really think that there's not enough of a market for it, then it's like, okay, let's test the waters and put it on Steam. I mean, of course, you have to commit to Valve's terms of service. But who cares? Valve can make it. They know how to make video games. Like some companies.
It's just that if you look at the work that's done on Hard Light and sites such as that, there is a market for it. I mean, it might be niche for all we know, but I think it's a lot bigger than what anyone actually thinks, because even the original Freespace games, they weren't dependent on you having a joystick. You didn't have to have a controller. You could play with arrow keys or anything like that.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, like, I'm one of those guys. Like, I played with arrow keys. I just liked it. I really like playing with arrow keys. I know, like, you're not really getting the feel of like an actual ship if you play with arrow keys, but to me, like, playing with the arrow keys always just felt so right, personally. So that's just me.
I mean, I played with a joystick. I played with that way pretty much my whole life. So I mean, that's how I started playing the game.
And I think the real reason I didn't use a joystick is because I didn't have a joystick. But even then, it didn't even decrease my like of the game. Really, it was still a great experience.
Yeah. And as you can see, the training mission goes on. You destroy some cargo containers. It's nothing really significant. And then
that's how we're still on the first training mission.
Yeah.
But more cargo.
Yeah.
Gotta destroy this cargo.
I
notice how they're already on fire.
Yeah, they give you damaged cargo to destroy.
So if you destroyed cargo in subspace, would that cut off the road? Okay, I'm not even gonna get into that argument yet. We'll talk about that. I'm just saying, throwing on fire cargo into subspace isn't a good idea to me. Subspace is not like explosions.
One great thing about Freespace is that the universe it's solid. It's there. There's nothing like hokey or weird about it. It's just it's a pretty self-contained and pretty well-established universe. It's not like a.
And I'm gonna be frank here. Most of the holes people have found in Freespace's universe or plot mainly stem from the fact that they're getting the story wrong. Like, oh yeah, and I guess it's a lot. And I'll give people this. It's a lot easier to get Freespace 2 story wrong than it is to get Freespace 1 story wrong. Yeah. And I always say that because Freespace 2 story is a lot more complex. I'm not gonna say that. I think this is where we disagree. Because personally, I like Freespace 2 story a lot more than 1. But that's just me. Like, and I think a lot of the problem with that a lot of people would have Freespace 2 story is just like. It's just like Freespace 1 ends. It has an ending. Freespace 2 maybe not.
I think that's my issue right there. Freespace 2 kind of has an ending, but it's not a conclusion. There's supposed to be a sequel, but there isn't one. So,
which I think goes back to that whole, the whole why they haven't made another game, because like just marketing, because I believe at the time Interplay really wanted to get a game out for the third quarter. I believe it was either the third or fourth quarter, and they released Freespace. They increased production on Freespace to get it out in time, but they didn't really get a chance to change up their marketing. As a result, Freespace 2 didn't sell nearly as well as they hoped.
Because no one knew it was out.
Yeah.
But it is, even now, it's one of the best-selling games on Good Old Games, so it's still being purchased, and I still own the original copy that was when it was released, so.
It's a Project Y.
And Delition keeps teasing us with secret project names.
He's like, in that April Fool's video where they're talking about putting the ostrich hammer in, it was Red Faction, right?
I think it was Red Faction.
Yeah, it was in Red Faction. Like, I'm not kidding. There's like on the easel in the background, it said FS3 release date, and I was like, what? I was like, oh. Volition likes to mess with us. They really do.
They know it's a game there's an extremely large group of fans. I mean, it might be niche, like I said before, it might be niche, but we really don't know until they release it.
Yeah, and get proper marketing for the game with that. Which is like, I guess if you release it on Steam, that's not going to be too much of a problem. If you make physical copies, then marketing really becomes a big thing you have to worry about.
Yeah. As you can see in this training mission right now, they're teaching you how to do different types of targeting, and going to teach you about disruptors, which destroy subsystems, as you'll probably hear, and basic missiles and eventually.
MX-50. Those are heat-seeking missiles. In space. You can hear explosions in space too. Didn't you know that? You see, you can hear explosions because there's no air to get in the way of the sound. That makes sense,
That's
right?
something to point out. Freespace's physics aren't technically accurate.
Yeah, which I don't care because I'm not gonna lie here, it makes the game more fun for me.
Yeah, I think I would not enjoy the game as much if the physics were.
If the physics were more realistic, the game probably wouldn't be as fun. I'm not gonna lie. Which is like something really that I think needs to be pointed out here is that Freespace, I guess it goes back to the physics thing, but if Freespace's physics were realistic, the fighters would not be able to move the way they do. At all. Like, especially the capital ships.
Unless you assume that they have, like, a whole bunch of thrusters all working perfectly. And when I say perfectly, I mean they have to be aligned in such a way that this thruster does this and this other thruster does this at the exact right time so you can turn.
And with the exact perfect intensity.
Exactly.
Which, I'm not gonna lie, it's possible in the future. I get that. But, still, with the fact that we only see on most fighters, like, thrusters in the back, it's kind of questionable.
Yeah.
Which is like, this is just my opinion. But if I were making Freespace 3, I would probably, like, make the engine design look different. Well, not so much the engine design, but the afterburn effects look a little different. Only because, I would make it more ambiguous as to how they're able to move forward. Because as is, like, you see you see the fire coming out, and it's just like, yeah, you're like those are thrusts moving forward. I'd probably make it more ambiguous as to imply that it's actually possible for them to move the way they do, but that's just me. I'm not even complaining because once again, if physics were more realistic, the game probably wouldn't be as fun.
And actually, there's something interesting here in this training mission I'd like to point out that in Freespace, ships have core systems, and then they have their main full integrity. What's nice is that you can actually disarm whatever the ships without actually destroying them. It's something that's a nice touch to me because it adds different things that you can add to missions to do.
That's how there's out there. But the explosions in this game they really look like explosions in this game.
Especially since the game was made in the 90s.
Yeah, which I guess you could argue easily that because we didn't mention this before. We're actually using the FS port for this right here, which graphically enhances the game by a large margin. Actually, it doesn't even I don't believe they've changed the models at all. They just changed the textures, really.
Yeah, it's all texture changes from what I can understand.
Yeah, which once again I think is a really good testament to how much a good texture can make a very basic model look amazing.
I mean, Freespace at its time was already a pretty good looking game, but now it's even better looking. So that's just kind of how it went. Even though it didn't sell well, it was still a pretty amazing game. Was reviewed extremely well.
I believe in an interview, Volition even admitted that Freespace 2 was probably their best reviewed game. It's probably still I think they said that it's still their best reviewed game, but it just didn't sell as well as other games.
I mean, it has a 91 on Metacritic,
that's
I mean, there aren't too many games on Metacritic that are obscenely high just because. I mean,
and I find it amazing that a game can win the Game of the Year award, but then not sell well enough to justify a sequel. This one actually moved.
Yeah, this next training mission is basically you're fighting drones. They're testing out your dogfighting.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's other. We had a second ago. When things explode, it actually broke apart, and it broke apart into chunks. The whole thing didn't just disappear when it exploded. Just throwing it out there.
Oh yeah, there is debris in this game. In fact, you see me colliding with them because I'm getting lazy.
It's a training mission when you already know how to play the game. You gotta bear with those people. And hey, look, the instructor just got bombed.
I try not to hit the instructor, but I'm okay with hitting him.
Yeah, who cares?
Boring fellow too.
Do not move your ship until I tell you to.
I guess that's one weakness of especially Freespace 1, is that you could argue that there isn't enough characterization, but to me, the way that they portray the story, the way it works, is fine enough where you do not need an extreme amount of characterization simply because it's more about the overarching narrative. It's not about individual characters.
It gives you kind of you're just a cog in the machine kind of feel, really.
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people don't like, but I was actually totally fine with that. Freespace 2 amps that up even more so, actually. But once again, when we get there.
Yeah, basically this training mission, all dogfighting. If you've never seen Freespace, it might be interesting, but the real interesting parts come later in the game, especially when you get to the first few missions, when you figure out what's actually going on. But right now, it's just you're out to get your pilot wings.
Yeah. I actually failed this third training mission a couple times.
Oh, did you? How did you do that?
I didn't destroy it.
Oh, just lazy or just?
I think I was just I was being too cautious because I knew they fire at you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was being too cautious, and because of that, I tried to not get too close to them, and I'd always end up missing one or two as a result. My first couple times around, then I realized I just need to just get in their face and just I shot.
Yeah. Well, that's the ending of training missions, and as you can see in a second, you get your pilot wings, and you're welcome to the GTA League of Defense, or whatever it is.
Which is funny, because no one ever says League of Defense after this moment. They just say GTA. Galactic Terran Alliance. Which, at this point, next time when we see you, we'll move on to mission 1, and we'll have more to talk about.
Yep. Lots going on.